First order of business, would you please stand and recite the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Great. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
You want me to mention anything now or?
Yeah.
Well, Kevin and I had a zoning board of appeals meeting last month that, in essence, what came up was, Dollar General was looking for a variance to have smaller parking spaces. Based on their square footage, they would have had to have approximately 70. And they were seeking, I think, around 33. And to come and say, hey, we got all these traffic studies, flow, so many transactions, we got 10,000 stores that support all this. And I think at the end of the day, we kind of said, yeah, but we're worried about that going with the property. So we don't want to make a variance for you and then have it go down 10 years from now, you sell the property and it becomes, I'll say, a restaurant or something that has a longer transaction time, maybe is a better way. So Kevin and I didn't know exactly when the right time was to, but I think it's going to come back before us potentially to not have one cookie cutter deal where, you know, you're a business, you have this many square foot, this is how many parking spaces you have to have.
That parking lot next to them services more than just them, though.
Well, and that came up too, and not without going into the details, maybe when we have time to discuss it, but it came into shared parking. The fact that their location had no ability to share parking other than on the road, which is not good. So there's a lot of, it seemed to me, it was almost like we were dealing a little bit with a PUD, but on a real small scale. You know, is that fair, Kevin? Go ahead and.
Yeah, so there's a new Dollar General that's looking at going on Sparta Avenue. So they haven't said whether or not it's gonna be, they're planning to have both stores, if they're gonna get rid of one. We just know that they're looking at a place on Sparta Avenue. Putting a Dollar General, the site plans are on my desk right now. They asked to do only like 30 parking spaces. I said, I can't allow that for variance. So like Ken was speaking about, the ZBA declined it, but they did make a recommendation to the planning commission to review the parking provisions. So
Now that's for their new one, they want a variance for
Potential new one, yes.
potential new one, okay, it had nothing to do with this one over
not
here.
for the existing.
Okay.
So that was just the item that whether you want to add it to new business tonight or to a future agenda, would just be taking up the ZBA's recommendation, and then if you wanted to explore it further.
What are the dimensions of a parking space right now as it stands?
Right now, the provisions, the Dollar General would be required to have 71 parking spaces, and that's based on total square footage of the building. Some of the questions the ZBA had brought up and that the applicant had brought up is, there's no provisions to allow for deferred parking. So, hey, we put in 31 now, but if in the future, we meet these criteria, this is, we'll put in the other 40. And also in some other communities, they'll allow for, there's total square footage, but there's also usable square footage. So those were some of the things that we discussed and wanted to bring to planning commission attention for further review.
What I was talking about was the width of the parking area, so.
Oh,
8 or somewhere,
can't be under 9. Yeah.
can't be under 9.
No.
Even then, 9 is too narrow. You gotta have 10.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think he misspoke when he said reduce the size of the parking spots. You meant reduce the total.
The
amount of
number, yeah.
parking.
Oh, okay, so they still have to retain that 9
Yeah.
9 plus.
Yeah, we as part as 10 wide and 20 deep, if I remember correctly.
Sparta Avenue south of town is where they're gonna put it?
Yes. We're looking at, I can't remember these.
11 mile and right, Dale?
Yeah.
Corner would be the northeast corner, right, Dale?
Oh,
Yeah.
where that house is.
Yeah, yep.
Oh,
Cause I had heard that the building here has asbestos or mold or something in it. Yeah.
No,
I'd be shocked if they kept that building.
So if you wanted to add to the agenda tonight, a couple other pieces, I know I just got an email from their engineer. I believe they're gonna be seeking a rezoning for the property. And just with. With all the different pieces with that project, that Sparta has it set that zoning administrator reviews and approves site plans. But it does give me the ability that if there's a significant public interest, bring it to the planning commission. Kind of my feeling at first is they've been really good to work with, but they've had some pushback on a couple items with screening. So depending on how that conversation goes, I might end up deciding to bring the whole site plan to the planning commission for review. But I didn't know if maybe it was looking at that all together. That's what the planning commission wanted to do, is look at the rezoning, the project. And the parking provisions kind of all at the same time, or at least at a similar time.
Question for you quick, Dale, based on the way Ken presented it. Even if there's a variance for parking with the property, wouldn't that variance go away with a change of use group?
Well, they really think the variance granted.
No, I'm just saying if they did get a variance for a retail store. And like you said, if it changes to a restaurant, then that variance would go with, it would have to change. I mean, that's null and void if the use group changes with the building, correct?
I thought it kind of.
I thought it went with parcel. We thought.
Special use would run with, wouldn't run with the property, that would be just. As opposed to a variance, we talking two different.
You'd have to have a public hearing, wouldn't you?
If there was a change in use, there would be a whole new site plan, but if it went from, right now it's considered a retail development and it's low. They say it's a low volume retail development. But if a new retail development came up, it's high volume, that might
Right.
trigger the change of use.
I think that's what we were confused too, though, is just what Tim just asked. We thought, right or wrong, that it went. Once the variance would be granted, it was like attached to that parcel, and then we felt that it would continue on. If they sold it or did different potential business, as long as they stayed within that zoning of that parcel.
It more likely would have resulted in a fairly major change in use.
It's kind of like the Starbucks down on Alpine there. I forget what that was, a Radio Shack at one time or something
yeah.
like that. And it was Starbucks and then people are out on
On the road.
Alpine Avenue, they're all over the place. Could change to something that would be much more traffic to deal with. Well, let's see how the meeting goes and we'll see about adding that to the end then, or maybe if you have some thoughts, include it in your next packet to us as far as what our options are, which way we could look at it. Standpoint. Okay. All right, we have a couple sets of minutes and I thought I heard everybody said they got the packet, so. Assuming they've all had a chance to look at the November 8th, 2022 and December 13th, 2022 minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to those? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from November 8th as written.
I'll support.
Motion, properly supported. Any other discussion? Call for the vote, or the vote, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay. How about the December 13th ones? Have any problem with those? Entertain a motion for
I'll make that motion.
motion for approval.
And I'll support it.
Not support, any discussion. Hearing none, call for the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment. Do we have any online? Is there anybody online? All right. So, Right to the business items, first item is, we're scheduled to have a public hearing on the amendments to allow wineries, microbreweries and distilleries and agricultural support services in the ag zone. Don't see anybody here for the public hearing, so. Pardon? Okay, so I'll open and close the public hearing, okay. So, I guess, our last meeting, we gave some direction to make some changes and those have changed. And would you like to review those with us?
No, happy to. I think the only really major change since the last meeting, we had discussed, the commission had discussed, allowing for more than just limited food pairings. So the commissioner brought up a couple different ideas of other municipalities we could look at. So since then, we listed a couple of places we looked, but you know, we looked at the MLCC regulations, we looked at the city of Benville, Alpine Township and Peninsula Township. Looked at a few others, but really, once we got to Peninsula Township, I think we found language that would have matched your intent of, you know, allowing for larger food options that would just as long as the winery, brewery, or distillery met the provisions of the MLCC and MDAR, they could serve food. So we copied that language and put it into your ordinance. And then looked at, there's only one other minor amendment. After we included that was removing some of the previous language that existed around food.
Any discussion or questions, Kevin, on that?
I have one. Is there any talk of any other wineries moving into the area? Maybe just looking at Dale.
Haven't heard of any of the daily competition.
I have not. Well, usually when you start one, and if it works out for you, and you know, people are gonna start to look at it.
I know there's a young gal that is looking to do one, but I think that'll end up in Casanova or Kent City.
Oh, close, but
Yeah. But, and I think it's down the road a bit.
Said Jamie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured it.
I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
There to make the motion to recommend. Recommend to forward it to the board.
To the board, I'll make that motion that we forward it to the board.
Support.
Was that Tim?
Yep.
I think Dale, you'll have to say the actual vote.
Yep, no, totally understand.
Okay, roll call vote in yet?
Driscoll,
Yes.
Doyle,
yes.
Humphries,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hartman.
Yes.
That would be scheduled for next month, I assume, on
Yeah, it'd be the February township board meeting. That'll be February 9th.
All right. Moving on to new business, we have a sign and non-conforming lot ordinance language. And I'll defer to Kevin to bring us up to speed on that. Everything in our packet.
Yeah, in the last meeting, we had briefly discussed, you know, why the signs had come up. So with that, we had an application on my desk that I wanted to help try to get the applicant some guidance. So prepared a more in-depth memo, but also prepared a couple different documents. There's one document that shows all the edits There's a lot going on with that one just because some of it's just minor word tweaks. But it shows the gap between what existed before the codification and what exists now. The two major ones were around signs within the residential and agricultural district. A lot of those have been removed to I haven't think of the word, but the Supreme Court said you can't regulate on content. So a lot of those provisions were very content based. If it's a farm market, if it's this or that. So all those provisions you remove, but in the process of doing that, it really shrunk down the size of what's allowed in ag and residential. Previously, you might have had a 100 square foot sign for certain uses in ag, but now it's limited to 32 square feet. The other major change would have been within the commercial district. At one point, there's a provision D within the commercial industrial zones that had been previously repealed. We don't know why or what happened, but at some point within the codification, that subsection was put back into the ordinance. And that really limits the types of signs. It's really listening to the full type signs. This came to our attention because the applicant had proposed a ground mounted sign. That if I looked at the provisions of the zoning ordinance, I think it meets the intent of keeping clear vision. But it doesn't match the black and white zoning ordinance. So really wanted to bring that to your attention, both for the size limitations, but also for the design limitations. And then to see if you all wanted to explore that further to allow different types of signs or to allow larger signs within the ag and residential districts.
So the change in the size of the signs, the square footage, was really driven by the Supreme Court. Is that correct?
With not being a part of it, I don't know the intent, but when I look at the provisions that were in the ag and residential, that was really driven by the Supreme Court ruling. Would be my assumption is it was really content based regulations within those.
Okay.
Is there anything that like the Department of Transportation? I mean, I'm looking at pole sign, for example. You can see traffic up to a point. You can at least see underneath it. Monument sign becomes pretty restrictive looking around it. I know there probably is all these setbacks and space and stuff, but is there anything that they have any say in what type of sign potentially would go in your township? Or is that not in their jurisdiction, I guess?
Yeah, around the state highways, they're definitely gonna have some of their own regulations. And then for, the roads that aren't the state highways, there's the road commission. The road commission's jurisdiction is just gonna end at the road right away. They might have some provisions around other corners and things to keep clear lines of sight. But that one impacts, your ability to regulate outside of the road right away or outside of, the state's right away.
Not to get off in the rabbit hole, but one thing that happened a little bit, I think I educated or Dale educated me on was, I'll call it the right of way. Let's say it's a 66-foot wide right of way for a road. That isn't necessarily from the center of that road. I don't know if everybody knows that, but I didn't. And so, for example, Peach Ridge would be the example I'm thinking of is the house that was built there, right on by the Twin Hills there. They look real close to the road. Well, that's because they are far enough away from I'll call it the highway right away, but that isn't determined from the center of the road. Is that right, Dale? Or
Well, it's not necessarily every road is in the center of the right of way. I think most county roads have to be. Private roads sometimes vary, they don't have to be right in the center.
and the only reason I was bringing that up is because of the signage, to your point. Like if somebody said, well, I'm gonna build based on, I have to maintain where the right of way or my easement or wherever that is. It could become a potential issue if there's a monument sign and it's right on that potentially clears the criteria for that, but more if we're seeing for traffic and stuff.
With the
I
set,
know, over the years, I never really had much problem with the sign, ordinance, you know, size and stuff.
Mhm.
And seemed to work with what businesses really needed, you know, for size. And I think what happened was in the codification, somehow. And it was never changed for a long time. Somehow it just wasn't produced properly anymore. Wasn't any. There was some additions, I know, there for changing signs, electronic. Remember, we got into that.
Right.
And we got into farm market sign. And the billboard was. Regular sign there.
That would be one case if the planning commission decided, oh, we just want to go back to what was before. It would really be just eliminating. Subsection B. That we got placed back in there. Was limited a lot of the commercial. That is.
That'd be the simple way.
Page 1, 2, 3 of the edit document is where it shows. It's appealed by ordinance number 01-05, and then it shows with all the additions of purchase disqualification.
Evan, which page is it on? It's page 3.
If you look at the edit document, there's 1, 2, and then 3 right about in the middle of the page is where that subsection B, the head better field is.
Says sign in non-conforming lots in comparison at the top. And some of it is
Oh, yep.
red.
I got it. Thank you.
So our options are to take out the parts that Supreme Court has entered in on. And just go ahead and adopt or reinstate our ordinance, or to maybe dig into a little bit deeper and modify it. Yeah, pretty much what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess that would be, the couple questions I would have would be, around the agricultural and residential. Would you want to, right now it's limited to 32 square feet. Where previously some signs have been allowed to be bigger, would you want to allow for bigger signs in the ag and residential district? If not, then we can leave it as is. And then for the commercial and industrial development, it could be as easy as taking those provisions back out. Or are digging back in further.
I mean, all the conditions would be subject to variance request or something of that nature. We really haven't had any, per se, have we? I mean, other than this one that came up.
Yeah, it was 2 recently that had come up. There was one sign in the ag district that was about 120 square foot. That before the content restrictions had been removed, would have been approved. I would have been able to approve that sign. And then the other sign was can't remember the business now off the top of my head. It was
utility contracting.
Yes, thank you. So those 2 both
Was
recently.
what did you, I didn't hear him.
Utility contracting.
Oh.
They currently have an existing pole sign,
Mhm.
but they're proposing a ground mounted sign that would still meet the total height provision, but there was some provisions with that subsection B that because it has to be 3 feet off the ground. I can't approve it as it would exist.
But again, those could be pursued if they went through the variance process.
They could, I think it's, I mean, unlikely, yeah, so unnecessary hard. Necessary practical difficulties. That in with both of those properties, there's no. In our opinion, no practical difficulties, so it would be really hard to get a variance for. Especially in terms of design, it'd be really hard for us to get a variance for either.
Plus you get a ton of non-conforming sign. And this is the word that came. Most all farming, or most all commercial signs and more than 30. Basically 120 street. 30 feet was an standing. Really, anybody look at the food state sign. There's more than 32.
Those would be existing, correct?
Yeah, but what happens, they go down. And then destroy it, and they have people get them.
Or steal them? Somebody want to steal your sign too? Yeah,
Way from price of plywood is going.
yeah. Hmm.
So there's already currently a difference in the two. Zonings, right? Residential can only be 32 foot, whereas commercial can be 64. Am I reading that correctly?
And depending on, yeah, so there are differences. Ags, 32, and then commercial, can be up to 64. And then there's also some provisions if the road is larger, they can have up to 128 square feet.
How large is your sign? You know?
I was just trying to think about that, actually.
It's better bigger than 4 by 8.
Yeah. Probably close to that, actually.
Does everybody want to think on that and maybe take it up at another meeting or? Strong enough feelings to move forward on it.
Well, I don't know why we wouldn't think about if it hasn't been an issue in the past. Why would we want to make it an issue now
Make it more restrictive.
and have it be an issue for the people that have already got signs in the ground, right?
What's driving the suggested reduction of the sign? Square footage.
Not necessarily, right now it has become more restrictive after the codification, the ordinance has become more restrictive on size and design. So, in agricultural, it's really shrunk the size that's available that you can build. And then, within the commercial and industrial district, it's really limited type of the design, so. I would not be able to do a ground mounted sign as Sparta Township. With the current ordinance. Really only, the full.
So is it a 10-foot setback or a 25-foot setback? What is it now?
Current zoning.
Parallel with the road, 25.
25. I was just looking at the line that was crossed out.
And 3 assigned parallel with road at least 25 feet from the right of way. Is that what you're looking at
Yeah, that's what.
on number 3? Down at the bottom?
Yeah. Yep, I got that, but we'll. Figure out.
B. So does that probably refers to,
Yeah, I think in your packet, there's also a. There's also.
Yeah, see, I don't.
oh, yeah,
Kevin,
is it,
Dale and I are just talking a little bit down
here
it.
it's crossed off and then it's changed to 25.
What is,
I think that's
again, what
what
is, why we
looking-
would want to make this more restrictive? Like, why, is it coming from Supreme Court is saying this? Why would we want to introduce all these potential issues with existing if we don't?
Well, that's what's already happened.
It's already happened,
Yeah,
okay.
so there, the ordinance, sign ordinance that existed before the codification. In the agricultural district had a lot of different provisions. That would be deemed based on the content of the sign. So it said. The old ordinance was, you can only have a 32 square foot sign in ag unless you're a farm or a farm market or this or that. And then
I
I
see.
created all these
Okay.
exceptions that would be content based. Those were completely removed. So now all signs in ag are limited to 32 square feet, where before.
You had the.
Yeah, that makes sense now. Yeah. When you, I missed the part about the content based and all that. So, yeah. Okay.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get rid of the content based statement essentially, right?
Yep, and all those have been removed.
Okay.
Right. And go to where it's just, this is your sign size, period,
Yep.
Yeah,
That sounds,
right?
to me, that sounds like a machine.
Well, it's your maximum sign size.
Correct.
right.
What do you think, Barb?
I think they should have better things to discuss than the size of the signs in the Supreme Court.
Well, I mean, there isn't any thing that says we can't have it be the 128 square foot that it previously was, correct?
Yeah, you could, right now it's limited to 32 square feet, you could make that larger, smaller, as long as that the regulations aren't content based, as long as it's.
Right.
I got you.
You can have
So that's really
separate
all we're trying to do, is we're trying to get rid of all the stipulations that used to be in the sign ordinance and said, okay, well, it's only 32 square feet unless you have a farmer's market. Then it can be 128.
But they took all that out,
Right,
Right.
right.
so
I mean, I guess I'm,
128 square foot for a sign. is
that's,
huge.
that's,
it's
huge.
big.
That's huge. That's
Yep.
probably larger than it should be.
That's
I won't
billboard
disagree.
size.
Right,
Approaching billboard.
64, yeah, that's a nice sign.
yeah,
And you don't want anything like that.
yeah, but I think
Anyway.
it could be concurrent with the commercial and industrial zoning
Mhm.
and the residential zoning at 64 square feet, right?
Mhm.
I mean. In my way of thinking, I just don't want to put a lot of these farmers markets or any of the agribusiness that's currently on the ridge
Mhm.
in jeopardy of not being able to put up a new sign of the
If,
same
if
size.
the other one gets taken down.
I'd like the general consensus of opinion is that we leave it the way it is. With the removal of the content based issues.
I don't see an issue with a ground mounted sign myself,
I don't either.
especially with the setback. I mean,
They aren't any worse than these planter boxes at the end of the streets where you can't see around.
right, because you think about it,
Park, everybody park, you gotta get way up.
right. And as you're pulling up to a corner and you're looking to turn, you're looking up the road a ways, and a
Mhm.
pylon sign would actually. Block that, I think, a little
More
more than what a
restrictive.
ground mounted sign was, unless it was a ground mounted 128 square foot sign.
That's fair.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're right with that.
Kevin, do you have an opinion on this or?
This is really, I wanna make sure that the
Yeah.
township gets what you want, and
Yeah.
just. That was my concern, with having a couple of signs that might have been. Approved under the previous ordinance. With that codification, a lot of stuff gets changed and sometimes doesn't always match the intent, so. Really bring it in front of the planning commission, that if you're not opposed to having other types of signs within the commercial and industrial. We can work to come up with some, examples from other communities or other recommendations. The things you could look at, and on the same thing where I was just saying, you want to limit. The signs to 32 square feet in the agricultural district, or do you want to, other signs?
If we're in agreement tonight, then we wanna just go ahead. And adopt it. Taking out the content based issues, what's the next step? Do we have to go to a public hearing? Do we have to? Put this back in or what?
I guess right now, if you kept it as it is, then there'd be no change to agriculture there, as it is right now, there's 32 square feet in agriculture. If you want to allow for more types of sign within commercial and industrial, that would have to be, zoning ordinance amendment to remove those provisions, so we have to. Prepare the ordinance, bring it in front of you. And then go to public hearing, and they want to review those provisions.
But we have to take out what we have to take out.
Some of it's already been done.
It's already done.
The content stuff was
Okay.
already done with the codification.
Okay,
So that-
so
Okay.
that's a non-issue.
Yeah.
Okay,
Keep it simple and just say,
keep it simple.
deal with it as it presents itself.
Yes, I'm a little confused though, I mean. The old ordinance we had before. Any, before the codification. You see, nobody ever voted to change. Automatically change. So to speak. I hope that we can go back to. What we had before. Now that 128, I think that. The sign that's in the commercial there, 37 and 10 Meadow, I think that's all in one. Because there's a number of people, kind of like a mall. You know, like things, the one time they had 80 tractors in there. Got some other business, that's quite a sign. Commercial, commercial, these pretty good sign.
Where are you talking?
It's on the corner of 1037 and 10.
Northwest corner.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay, now I know where you're talking, I know where you're talking about now.
What about on the other side of the highway? Right?
Right.
Landscaping, nursery.
Mulch place.
But it's
What
set
is
back,
that?
it's
Is
not
that Zone commercial or agriculture? That is commercial.
definitely set back enough that it's not inflicting on the view of anything and.
But they far exceed the 32 or the 64 square feet, I bet, right? I mean, those are billboard size.
Yeah, they could be like one.
Kevin, you mentioned something about roads. I didn't like about highway. There's a difference between, let's say, to Dale's point, M37 sign versus, I'll call it a private drive sign or something like that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, there's the provision. It should be the last 3 pages of your packet. For me, it's double sided. I don't want to print it off for you. So maybe the last 6 pages of your packet. The top will say current sign ordinance.
I mean, text amendment.
It's not the strike through document, is it?
No. Gotta be,
Maybe I went too far.
yeah, you went too far.
I put my packet up in the. We'll just say current sign ordinance at the top of the. page.
Okay,
That should be a little bit further.
The current section, it's right after your.
here we go.
Very memo.
Oh. Old
Yeah.
ordinance.
It is in the front.
Stable.
Yeah.
Ah, look at me.
So it's on page 2 of the current sign ordinance where there's, it says. Freestanding signs may not exceed 64 square feet. Except. If it's on a state divided highway, a road having more than 4 lanes, then the sign can be up to 128 square feet.
So that sign
Okay.
would be fine.
Okay, so that would make a difference.
Dale's
in that
talking about.
instance.
No, that's 4 lanes there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It would be,
I don't think that's in the current thing. I think that's-
Or-
except
Yeah.
freestanding sign, so that would be fine.
I think the biggest concern that I would have within the commercial and industrial district would be, so it's in the commercial and industrial. It's like subsection B. Where it says freestanding signs shall be at least 8 feet above the ground, measured from the bottom of the sign, except the following shall be permitted. That subsection had previously been removed. When that was added back in. It changed what types of signs, what designs of signs would be allowed. So that might create some non-conforming signs, so a ground mounted sign would not be permitted.
So any new or replacement signs, they'd have to conform. Yes, they gotta put a new sign up anyway. They're just gonna have to conform to this. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. In my opinion.
Kevin, I'm looking, it's kind of a, what's the, on some of the different, symbols, there's like, almost like hieroglyphics, like before something like, on, like here, I'll explain that. Like if it was actually illegal, like, what is?
Oh, that's, so when I created this document. It created, I had to take a scan of an old document. And then there's a lot of computer voodoo to try to get it to, I can try to show what happened between the old
Okay.
ordinance, new ordinance.
Okay,
There should be, separate from that edit document, there should be a clean copy of what the current sign ordinance is.
gotcha.
It's in the front of your front, more
I
towards the
got you.
front
That
of
was
the
just as
packet.
you're almost like rough draft going through there, doing this, doing that, whatever.
Yeah, if I would have
Okay.
tried to get everything, it would have, how many hours? I did a scan of it and then I used optical character recognition instead of trying to retype the whole portion, so.
I gotcha. I thought you had new language or something that I didn't understand there.
Yeah,
It's not fully developed yet.
computer programmed language. Right, they would do what you said, just keep it simple and.
I'm good with that.
I'm still confused on it. Simple. Are you proposing to keep the current sign ordinance? Or are you proposing to go back to the old sign?
I would say just keep the current sign ordinance and then, if somebody's gotta replace the sign, they're just gonna have to go to the current.
The
ordinance.
reason we had to remove the language from the old sign ordinance was for an external reason though, right?
Yeah, that was because of the Supreme Court decision.
The language within the ag district, that was
Yeah,
removed because of the Supreme Court. I don't know why, why that subsection was added back in, and I think my conversations with Dale. I don't know why that got, there's no reason. that it would have to be added back in, but I don't know if there were previous conversations and that was done unintentionally. It could be as easy as removing that subsection and you go back to what it was before.
well, maybe it got left out before and shouldn't have. Maybe it was an oversight.
It got, that subsection D within the commercial and industrial zone, there is a note that was repealed in 2001.
Okay,
So that was, at one point, that full subsection was intentionally taken out.
okay. But now they put it back in.
Yeah, with the codification, I don't,
It was a mistake. A mistake that wasn't clear. He never,
Okay, so
it's just something and somebody else did. You had no say.
And it's just plain to get caught. I mean,
So in the old ordinance that you're referencing, right? The size for a residential sign and agricultural signs was what?
What was it in the old ordinance?
I think.
That's the back.
Kevin. I just do know that with the current sign ordinance. Can you, Kenny Hoover can't do his sign. And neither can, what do we call it, inside farm?
their utility cap.
Usually, they can't. And they will not be issued a variance, because they don't meet standards of the variance. And I never had any problem 25 years ago. No variances were. Ordinance is fine.
Did the old ordinance allow for ground mounted?
That's what I'm looking.
Yeah.
Never had any complaints.
Which is why I asked the question of the size of the,
Yeah, what's changed?
Yeah, so if we look at the, you know, the residential and agricultural as it by itself.
Yep.
There is a copy of the old sign ordinance within your packet, I'm not sure.
And that's what I was trying to find that B, but it's not in there. So,
If you look at the agricultural, that's where a lot of provisions are taken out. There's been, you know, one temporary unlighted sign. There's one identification sign, I thought it was 32 square feet. Though that language hasn't changed much. What really changed a lot between agricultural and residential is all the exceptions that exist that allow for larger signs for certain uses. The farm market side could have previously been 128, but that would have been deemed regulating based on content, so. All of those exceptions were removed, and now it's purely limited to only 130 square foot signs in agricultural.
Now, you wouldn't have much of a change of the sign at 32 square feet.
4x8 sheet of plywood, right?
You know, if you know, if you go over and down.
so according, if I look at the strike through document that says sign non-conforming lot comparison, right? And I look at residential and agricultural zones. It says here that it was one identifiable sign may include a bulletin board not to exceed 32 square foot. So the previous ordinance was 32 square foot also.
right,
Yes. Just allow for a lot of exceptions.
Like banners, and banners. I use them banners,
I've used.
not a farmer,
Mhm.
forget it,
Is that part of the
but that
sign?
wasn't allowed on the old one.
yeah. Yeah, they specifically talk about it, and deciding to ban. Temporary.
But we're not talking about temporary signs, we're talking about permanent signs.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah, but they come into play.
I got people that can't do what they want to do. You're gonna have tons of people. And I don't know. Maybe I'm in violation. I'm gonna put my sign up and somebody hits it, I report it right back.
Not to beat this up, but to your point, okay, so they'll. The content gets confusing to me because physical size, it comes like I come there, I'm an agricultural guy and I come in there and I go, okay. I can put up, I go to Kevin, I go, I can put up a 32 square foot sign unless I got agricultural. Oh, then you can do 128, I'll say. But isn't that the difference here? It's not, to your point, the square footage isn't the difference. It's more that 2001 when you change the codification where the content of the sign is what really got changed, right? Or am I missing something here?
Yeah, I think if we look at just, you know, agriculture. Don't think about what happened with the commercial stuff.
Yeah.
But ag, yeah, the ordinance said now and before 32 square feet. What's changed between now and before is now it truly is only 32.
Without the exception of the fact that I'm an agricultural person, gonna have a farm market. Okay. I think I get that. So I guess in that essence, are we supposed to raise that square footage to, I'm just talking 64 or a higher number because they don't have that, kind of to Dale's point, they don't have that ability to say, well, I'm an agricultural person or something like that. So that rule doesn't necessarily apply to me. I can go as big as maybe 128 is way too big, but something bigger than 32. Or is that something we gotta talk about more?
That's what I wanted to bring to your attention, see if that is something, whether you wanted 32 or if you wanted to allow for larger or.
The problem comes is, how do we go back to the old ordinance? Without the language in it that we can't have,
Exactly.
basically, right? So, because that's the one that. Extends that out in the farm area.
Usually something larger signs everywhere. Restricted on with the farm or. These ones, it's not allowed. We do some provisions no matter what we use.
Because that's where it came into play before, right? It was 32 square feet unless they have
Mhm.
a rock in their front yard or
Yeah.
whatever it was. And then we could say, okay, you can have a larger sign. Right? So I mean, the whole goal or the whole point to this is we want to clean it up so that there's not all these loopholes, if you
Yeah,
will,
concept.
Experiences.
right? To where we allow them to have a larger sign. Would that be a correct way to look at it? Because I mean, that was what the whole purpose of the special purposes were. So that they could have a larger sign. So if we just upped the square footage area of the sign, doesn't that accomplish the same thing and get rid of all the unnecessary language that we're trying to get rid of?
That's not gonna allow for the ones who want the ground sign.
That's
Well,
a different issue.
That'll be different than,
Yeah.
the ground signs would be more of a commercial and industrial.
Okay.
issue.
Right.
I guess that would really be my question for the ag is, do you want to allow larger than 32 square feet in ag? In residential? And then if so, what size? And if not, then there's no changes, there'll just be a 32 square foot sign.
Dale, do you know what Kenny wants to put in for how big a sign?
I thought it was the sign on the building.
Yeah, it was a building sign. It got pretty close. I want to say it was like 120 square feet. That would have been, Huber Storage LLC. And that would have been on the side of this building.
So it's physically attached to his building then?
You remember Clay's Farm?
Yeah. Yep.
Remember that guy in Conklin, that Jack signs, he made a lot of it.
Yeah.
They're really sharp looking.
Yeah. Yep, I know what we're talking.
Nothing wrong with our old sign. Nothing.
Well,
Other than the parts that we
Yeah.
can't have.
Well, that just was done by some codification. I don't know how it even happened.
well, by doing that,
But that was not approvable.
No.
Because we never had anything where we brought it for an amendment, really, other than the changeable signs were on there, and then we did open it up more. For the farmers, so they could have the temporary banners, I remember that. You know,
And farmers got a program for everything else, they was a program for signs. I'm not bashing farmers, you use what's out there.
I don't know, I just don't wanna hurt businesses that are. They don't want to have, well, good examples of the car dealership, sure, down the road. You can never have it.
What sign? The sign they got,
Chevrolet,
the sign they got.
those are big ones. Cool. I don't know what kind of sign, Dollar General is gonna have, but I'm. Oh. I don't know, the sign. And, what's that? Well.
Right, smart.
Yeah, you wanna. You don't wanna do these guys. Extra things they gotta.
But the signs that are up are okay because they're up.
Yeah, if somebody hits them.
Well, how often does that happen?
Mine's been damn twice. You know, I'll put it.
but it sounds like right now we've already moved, like we can't keep the old sign ordinance for the reasons, right? I mean, so in doing that, to your point, Dale, in doing that, we moved because of the 2001 thing. And now we're at this new impasse with this, but we don't want to lose the flexibility to have the bigger sign.
We can keep the old
We can keep the old sign ordinance and not remove the content.
Right.
No, that would, content-based restrictions on whether it's a farm market or a farm, those are unconstitutional.
So that makes it, yeah, that's where I'm a little confused.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, you could change the content base, that'd be quite simple to do, and it's probably not.
You could, if you wanted to, you have to allow for a larger sign.
A larger sign, but you can't go against what the Supreme Court said you can't do.
So the criteria has to change on how to face that bigger sign.
Yeah.
Right.
All I wanted to be, or just what we had before.
You had,
Never had any problems.
So what happens right now is, like you said, if somebody comes and they say they want it bigger than a 32-foot square. They can't meet the standard, so they can't get a variance probably because. So to your point, you don't want to make it too restrictive there because. Otherwise, you're gonna be at the zoning board of appeals going like, what's going on? We need a variance and you're not gonna meet those 7 standards.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see it. I don't know.
Long and short is we can't keep the old because of the. It's unconstitutional, is that
Right.
correct?
You would be able to get all the exceptions in there.
so just change it from 32 to a max of 64.
But I don't know that that still gets us to the,
Gotta get it 120. Definitely.
But they can have that if they're near the highway or whatever.
More than highway.
Well, and that's where the provision for agriculture and residential are separate from
Right.
the business, so businesses would.
So, okay, so do we have to do anything else to our old ordinance at all, other than address the ag portion?
There's, for the signs, there'd just be whether or not you wanna allow for a larger sign.
No, I'm just saying, so for this, whatever you say is unconstitutional. Do we have to address, versus going back through it again, any other section other than ag? Because ag is the one that made the exceptions for this, and then for this, and then for this, right? So then why can't we go back to the old ordinance, just set a maximum size on the ag and move along?
I agree. So I said, keep it simple.
Well,
And
what's
that would be the
maximum-
simple thing to
what's the
do.
Maximum size we're gonna set.
Before you could, if you hit all the criteria, you could go up to 128, right?
Mhm.
Square feet.
But the problem with that is, Tim, that had criteria before, whether it was right or wrong. Now there won't be any criteria. Actually, in essence, they could put 128 foot, and there's nothing maybe wrong with that, but that's what we would potentially, no matter where it was at, if it was an agricultural, we would allow the 128 foot sign, right? Or am I missing something?
No, that's exactly right.
So I mean, I worry about, at least before there was at least some steps. And they may prove them all and they get to 128, that's all good, but. Just to have that open. 128, I'm concerned,
Well,
or somebody comes in and goes, look, I want to put 128 square foot sign. And I'm in agricultural and I meet the correct criteria, and Kevin goes, yes, you do. And then there's plenty of signs that'll work fine on a building potentially, but I don't necessarily want a bunch of blue billboards down Fruit Ridge either, I don't think.
And that's where, if the planning commission wanted, we could come up with another method, because. Some communities, they will differentiate between whether it's a ground mounted sign or a building mounted sign, and there can be different provisions from there. For example, in Sparta Township, they've got provisions that it's based on, how far you are set back from the road. So you have to be at least X amount of feet, and then if you're, 10 feet from the road, it can only be this high, but if your sign's 30 feet from the road, it can be this big. I know signs can get rather complicated.
it sounds like. But I think there's merit to it, right? I mean, if we think
Question.
about the Kenny Huber sign, I'm assuming, is that the Fruit Ridge and south of 12 Mile building that he wants to put the sign in?
He wants it on his building.
Is it that building, I guess is my question.
I don't know.
He's got too many buildings. We don't.
Well,
want
okay. Well, I guess it doesn't matter, right? But a 128 square foot sign on that building would not dwarf. The sign is not dwarfing the building and vice versa, right?
Nor is it causing a
Even
visual
mechanically,
issue.
if it's attached to a building, that's.
It's on the building.
It's not.
Right.
So-
Well, you take that same sign and you stick it out on the road on two telephone poles now.
Now it's an issue.
Yeah, it's kind of what Kevin was alluding to,
Yeah.
like maybe we need to have some kind of a way to. You know, I don't know how, I don't want to get it too complicated, but
Got a building, it can be such a size.
yeah, I mean, because if the size of the building is so big and if it attached to the side of it, to me.
Right.
As long as it doesn't extend out maybe more than, I don't know, I'll say a foot. You know, it's probably, you can have as big as the building is. If you so chose.
There again, we're making a lot of work here, aren't we?
Yep.
Or two. We're hoping for the cookie cutter. It didn't look like it's gonna work.
Well, if we can't go back to what it was in the previous language, if we gotta get rid of the previous language, I guess, which is the issue, right?
Yep,
Then I think it needs to be revisited to be able to get to something similar to what we had.
Yeah.
Right, because I don't think we just wanna say, okay, you can have a 128 foot square sign,
I don't think so either. I
and
can't.
I don't care where you put it or how you put it, or, you know. I think there needs to be
Too many
restrictions. now.
opportunities for take advantage of that.
Right,
Now, you might put in commercial.
right, right. And even, I mean, this doesn't allow for a ground mounted sign in ag either, correct?
Our park is at a ground level. And the park.
What is that zone? That's commercial, isn't it?
that's within the village though, isn't it?
Oh, you're right.
So
Yeah, you're right.
I would
So you
say,
should parallel our commercial with your.
residential and agricultural provisions are broad enough that it could be ground on that sign, just. You know, one temporary, in the current, there's two provisions. That are specific, one temporary unlighted sign. So one temporary sign, that's 8 square feet or less. And then one identification sign, that's 32 square feet or less, so that could be building mounted.
So it doesn't really.
Banner.
specify.
Or banner. I'd say that the banner would probably fall under
Mhm.
temporary sign. So it's broad in terms of types of design, just 36 square feet or less. So I just look at broad.
So that part of it's fine. I think we want to leave that broad, right? As far as the type of sign. Yes, where that leave us, right?
doesn't look like it's
I think
gonna
we
get
need more
decided
information. I
tonight.
think we need to have some examples of other side ordinances
Yeah.
to review.
Mhm.
I mean, that's my feeling.
I don't feel comfortable right now. I mean, because of all the things that Dale brought up and other people brought up. I thought it was gonna be a little simpler, but I think there is potentially. I'd rather think about it myself. And go out and actually see. And try to put a size to some stuff, because right now, I mean, I can understand a 4x8 sheet of plywood, but I don't really know. The 64 versus a 84 square foot sign. It'd be nice to maybe even have examples of those and kind of go, okay, now I can. Or even like you said, Kevin, I thought that was important. Sparta Township has where. The farther back from the road, you might get less restriction. The closer to the road, maybe there's some kind of. Because I don't think we have anything built in for that, do we? Not to make it more complicated, but I can see logically why that would maybe be.
Yeah, I'm happy. The planning commission wants some examples, and I can go back and talk to some of our associates. say, hey, what are some your favorite examples or whatever, and try to bring back a variety of, you know, different sign ordinances that we see, and just have some more examples. For all the doing stuff.
Yeah. I think it's probably the better way to go, at this point. Not something that. Gotta be decided tonight, I think, it's examples. Maybe. In our travels this next month,
Yeah.
maybe kind of take a look at signs. Go to the signs.
Yeah.
I mean,
I will be.
is our concern the obstruction? Visual obstruction or just? Clutter, you know, I don't know, what's the driving force on the sign side?
I think in my mind, to talk for myself, right? To have a small roadside farm market. With a sign that's mounted. You know, off in the ground, that's 128 square feet. Sitting in the front lawn of that. Would look dwarfed. To the operation. Right? Now, if that's on M37 and it's setting up by the highway, there's already provisions that say that we can do that, right? But if we just say, okay, you can have 120 square foot sign. Without any restrictions on that. I think we can end up with a community that has these great big signs in front of a small operation. I guess that would be my concern.
I'd be worried about that too. I don't.
You know what I mean?
It's like to be like driving down I-65 or 75 and, you know, there's a little business like, I don't say fireworks, it shouldn't discriminate, but you understand. That sign is a monster sign, there's a little shack. You know, and so, yeah, I think there's more to think about. I don't have the answers myself.
Hey, you can bring us back some next time.
Give some examples.
Jim, you in agreement with that too?
What, that I just got extremely confused? I think we're 100% agreeing with that.
Where we started. Do we have to do anything like table that or do anything with that, Terry, or just like?
No, it's just to be continued as far as it's just here for discussion. As far as us doing something on it, how do we wanna approach it? Do we wanna look at others? Or do we wanna just go ahead and prove something tonight? No. We need to get some other examples. We've waited this long, might as well.
Question. Kevin, is this the matter that had a deadline in February? Or is that something else?
That's something else, that's gonna be with the event farm.
All right.
The deadline. One other piece I wanted to bring to the planning commission attention, is the non-conforming lots. So, I know we've been talking about signs a lot, but also, one other, and in my conversations with them, we're not sure when that got changed, but the provisions around non-conforming lots was changed during the codification. The biggest piece that changed there is there's a line within the current non-conforming lots piece that says it has to be 80%. Essentially, what's happening is the townships taking legally non-conforming lots and making them non-buildable because of that 80%. This time, I'm not even sure that's defensible. But that would be the result of it from a conversation that Dale and I had with DSS, with that would create a lot of issues within Sparta Township by creating non-buildable lots. Because that 80% language is in there, that's very, very unique that we don't see any of our other communities. So if that's something that you all want to, would you either strike that language or review the non-conforming lot language?
Is that in here?
It should be in the edited version.
Section 154.144.
It's not one.
Wait, is it?
Mr. Chairman, too, because I know we try to combine it as one, but if this is something that you'd like us to see this separate into different issues, we're happy to do that also.
I think that'd be better.
I don't see it, so I'm not sure where you're at.
Last couple of pages of last four, red line.
Oh, down here, non-conforming lot.
Where's it?
The, after all of the strike through, it's, point C.
No, there it is. I see it.
Okay, so the issue here is, can you maybe revisit what you said?
Yeah, so we just recently had this come up, where a property owner was looking at their property, it had an existing building. Unfortunately for them, they tore that building down, otherwise that'd have been, they could rebuild there, but now that they've torn it down, their lot isn't 80%. The minimum acreage, it would be a minimum of an acre for the single family dwelling. And I think it was 100 feet. They've only got 0.77 or 0.79 acres. And they only have like 70% of the required frontage. So because of that, that lot is non-buildable. But it existed previously to the zoning ordinance. It came to me for a new building permit, I'd have to deny it. I don't know that would be able to defend that in court. Whether or not we can, I want to make sure that you all are aware that.
So they tore down foundations and all, everything else?
That's my understanding, that they own a few different lots within that area.
And it can't be connected to another lot?
They wouldn't be able to use it for the same use, they'd have to sell it, or they'd have to own the properties, combine them, and a lot of other things. And that's just for that one property owner. If we went through and did a whole inventory of the township, there could be lots that don't have that same, or they don't own adjoining properties, they just haven't go a lot.
So
See, this again was something that was just changed, you never voted.
well, up until this point, it would have been that situation or scenario would have been grandfathered because of at the time it was built, right? But now because of, to Dale's point, because of the new, I'll say change. Now we have to put new language in here to meet that requirement, or?
Yeah, previously, provisions around legally non-conforming lots, there's legally non-conforming, there's legally non-conforming. There were also some provisions that, gave some specific rules for setbacks, so. Hey, maybe your lot's legally non-conforming, but you can still build a house, and because it's legally non-conforming, we might allow you to be a little bit closer than would otherwise be required. What's changed now is that it's a legally non-conforming lot. If it still meets 80% and setbacks, you gotta meet the district.
So if it meets 79%, it's not, it's 80 or 81. Okay, I see what you're saying.
But I guess the question to the planning commission is if you're open to removing that 80% language, so if you're legally non-conforming lot, you're a legally non-conforming lot. The other changes, you just be required to use the setbacks. If somebody did come to the case where, you know, because of the house or wherever, they weren't able to meet the setbacks, they would have that variance. Should you're open to them, they might have a case for a variance because of the,
You just basically, if we take out the 80%. It would,
yeah, I think that would resolve a lot of your potential issues.
But they could rebuild with the variance.
with a variance.
Would be a legally non-conforming lot, if it was legally non-conforming lot, they could build. The only place that they might have to is if they weren't able to meet the setbacks, but I mean. For that, you know, that 0.80 per parcel, they'd still have enough property to meet the setbacks and what have you. I don't see that as a problem.
I don't either.
I say we take out the 80%.
Can we agree on that, yeah?
Yes.
I mean, if it's an existing lot, I'm thinking 50.
Yeah,
I mean, they've got other setbacks, you know, now with septic fields and everything else, they have reserve areas, they have to make sure that they have enough room to get all their. Whatever. Infrastructure on it, yeah.
The other thing too, I don't think we want to put something in there that we can't defend. And I think that to your point, if somebody new. Right,
I
I mean,
that I've been paying taxes on is a lot.
yeah, yeah.
I was doing that in the village and all of a sudden they just combined them.
I wonder, I want to ask you, but I thought you did, yeah.
Yeah, they just said, yeah, sorry. We're putting that one to that one.
Remove the 80%.
Any agreement on that?
Yep, I'm good with it.
Yep.
All right.
Now, what is the procedure on that?
I was gonna say.
Does that have to be, sent to the township board then? Okay.
Yeah, that'll be a zoning ordinance amendment, so, this is
Maybe I
where,
ought to put it in the motion.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
But is he, are you doing the changes all at once and then presenting it to the township?
that was gonna be my next question, you know, because it sounds like there's a lot of conversations that there may still be a lot of conversations around for signs. But I could write a separate non-conforming amendment that gets through and taken care of. There are some additional costs in the public hearing. Pieces. Or we could wait while you're having to discuss the signs.
Well, it's not a burning issue right now. Well, you got that one.
You got somebody right now that's got an issue.
We know it's there right now, they're not looking to build.
Okay. They're not wanting to start this spring or something. Okay.
Okay.
I guess to conserve on the funds, we'll go ahead and wait. And
Put it all at once.
Put it all together, have one public hearing. Great. Old business. Onberg's event barn. Continuing saga. Where do we have-
Ongoing drama.
The couple weeks ago, I went with the building inspector, so, see the loop, gone through, look at the building. I'll be back in tomorrow, but I know last week we went out there, he took some notes. He's been reviewing the plans. I don't know if he's gotten another back to chat about all the pieces yet. Chad's been working with me to make sure all the drawings and all those things are up to date. So right now, the plan is. He's still waiting on some things from Steve. Chad would like to. Wait till he has. That list, he wants to make the corrections before he comes to the plan commission for that final approval. And I'm working with Chad just to make sure that. He has everything ready to go and putting together that final packet. But the next meeting, the issue will have been tabled for a year. So. Bringing that back to the planning commission next February. Next meeting, this packet's complete, he's done all his pieces. Bring it to the planning commission for that review. If not, bring it to the planning commission's attention. It would be up to you whether or not you want to close his application and make him reply, or if you're willing to accept.
And that year is based on because the application is good for a year, is that why?
Yeah, talking with legal counsel, so this is just, we coming into it late.
Sure.
The township could make the case that the issue was tabled in November, formally tabled in November of 1. So in 22, there's said it's been a year, the application's closed. When we're looking at the minutes, we never got formally taken off the table, but the planning commission did discuss this at further meeting. So up until February of 2022, there was some back and forth with Mr. Mauber. So really looking at that as kind of, okay, February, you had some direction from the planning commission. He never really took any formal steps that I'm aware of. It wasn't until late last year that it came back to the planning commission's attention. So that's where, okay, February 2022, you've had your year plus to meet the criteria given to you by the planning commission. At this point, if you hadn't proceeded through all those steps, the planning commission could close the application. So choose.
It ought to be pointed out to him as long as he gets us the stuff in sufficient time to be able to make our review for the February meeting. And we can proceed. If not,
Start over.
Wasn't some of it due to the building inspection though?
right, but there was still some things that he had to.
There was a lot of, we never heard back from him on.
Not necessarily stick it up for him, I'm just.
No, no, but there was a lot that he never got back to us. We kept waiting, but never heard from him.
Or get it back the day before or
Yeah.
whatever.
That will be something I'll bring to the planning commission's attention. His application isn't ready, but it's because he was waiting for feedback from the building inspector. I'll make sure that you're aware of that.
Any other public comment? Hearing none. Anything? Yeah, we got anybody?
Does anybody know where we are on the trailer park? On the south end of town? As far as him improving the water or the. I mean, he was supposed to be working on that drain field and
Right.
And the basin and stuff, yeah.
I'd heard a rumor it got sold. So I don't know if that was true or if it didn't get sold, or I don't know how it could get sold when, according to Grand Rapids, his license had been put on hold because they hadn't done what he was told to do. So
Because of the problem already with the.
exactly, with the
Sewer lagoon.
sewer
Yep.
treatment.
Yep, ponds, yeah.
We haven't heard from them, have we?
Dale, have you heard anything from him?
Not itself. I mean, I know there's been for a trailer park up in the northeast that just recently.
Yeah, that's
They-
Long Lake Drive. Yeah. No, what is it?
Glenwood is.
Glenwood.
Cause they haven't come in for the plans for put that new roadway in or entrance or anything.
Well, Dave Hamrich said that he had sold a piece of property to him. Yeah,
But. I mean, I've been in there just kind of driving through and I haven't seen anything going on in there. As far as any work back in that.
didn't they lose their license?
Well, that had been put in suspension before we even started talking to him, is what I found out. So. Interesting.
I don't know what it would take from us to send them a letter and say we want an update on
What's going on?
what's your progress on
Yeah,
making the changes that you agreed to do.
Yeah, if we can touch base, so I can get better up to speed with that, probably that'd be, I appreciate it, but, and thank you, write a letter. And that's kind of the pieces is going in my head, he lost his license, so a lot of that might be working with the whole home commission.
And that's who told me that they had suspended his license because he had not dealt with the issues with their water treatment, their well, and a couple of other things. And we weren't even aware that his license had been put in suspension.
Zoning issue that they're going.
Well, they wanted to make an expansion. And we said, well, you need to clean up what you got, because it was a mess.
You think it's any better in there? though?
It is, to a certain point. They have removed a number of trailers. I'll give them that. They've brought in some more. And they have skirted those that they've brought in and whatnot. Some of the ones that were just a mess have been cleaned up. I'll give them that much. It does look like they were making progress in that. But no, I was just curious. I mean, where are they on this water treatment?
Right.
Because that was a biggie.
But we,
It's leaking. It has to get fixed.
but we give approval to put the rapid infiltration basins.
Yeah.
thing in. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's nothing, we're not holding up anything.
no,
There's-
he supposedly was gonna spend $4 million on this whole thing.
That's right.
And we haven't heard peep out of them, so I was just curious where it all stood.
Yeah, because I mean, he spent a lot of money, obviously, with the engineering and everything else.
Yeah,
We did a lot of work on coming up with the proposed.
Might have bigger.
Maybe.
so, okay, that was my question.
We talked to the paid them from home.
It was, in Grand Rapids. I'll be honest, I don't remember. I wrote the name down and everything, and
Right, as far as that.
I know it also involved, Eagle, and
Oh, yeah.
that's how I finally got somebody from there to actually answer me regarding the whole thing, but I still can't get them to answer me any questions about fleet property. It's like you don't discuss it. They just will not talk about it.
I'm a retired employee and I can't get answered.
It is the most bizarre. That's why I wanted to put more grapevines. You need to put more grapes on that hill. That would be beautiful.
Can't talk to them. You got to leave a message in.
I've left them messages for 2 years and nobody has ever called me back.
That's the world today.
It's crazy.
Many
I
answers.
understand it, there used to be the DNR, that's the Department of No Response.
Okay.
Well, I did earlier, about the time. Just procedural questions, making sure that the packets are getting to you through email, making sure everything. You guys are all happy about it. Going through.
That's great.
Very much so. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything that you would like to see in the future, just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I had my packet actually even before the weekend. Sometimes I used to get it on Tuesday.
Monday?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Well, we had transferred our mail to Seattle. And this came after we had to transfer back, so came at the right time. Came in decent time. Otherwise, in transit.
What is the township's policy about, I don't know how to even word this, but the gentleman on 10 Mile Road up there, the storage facility, that he has liquidation stuff
Oh, you mean-
sitting out on the edge of the road,
Oh, yeah.
and he hasn't done it for quite a while now, so I don't know if he went out of business or what, and probably because of the weather.
Talking about the one just before Benton
Yeah,
on the north.
and
side.
he lines it up all there along the road there, and then there's cars stopping, and I mean, it causes quite a traffic issue. And then he plops one of his pallets right on the corner by the
Yeah.
bow tie,
Yeah.
and he had one down on the corner of Pine Island. I actually called the cops, because I had a lady almost ran right into me because she couldn't see.
Yeah. I thought at first you were gonna say the one on the south side of 10 Mile, just by the
Well,
railroad tracks.
that guy, I don't know what does poor Alpine
Every
do
time I
about
go there,
him?
I'm thankful he's in Alpine Township.
Yeah, no kidding. He piles it on top of stuff so
Every
that
day I
it's
go
not
by
on the
there.
ground.
Thank you, God.
Oh,
Yeah, you can't have anything on the ground. It's gotta be.
Yep. So he
in a
puts it on,
trailer.
yep, he puts it on top of trucks, he puts it on top of cars. He's a piece of work.
That's-
But anyway, I just,
No, I know, I observed what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
he lines those pallets up just right along the edge of the road on the grass. You know,
See, that would be more of like a highway commission or.
I thought so too, and I called the county and asked
Yeah,
them, and you know what they
it's a right
said?
of way
They said,
commission.
call the county
Right.
police and have them go
Yeah,
drive
It
by.
would be.
Well, there's a garage there, across from Holy Family Church in the back.
That's a different guy.
That's somebody different.
That's somebody
They're
totally
basically
different.
selling the same stuff.
They're doing exactly the
Yeah.
same thing. They sell up
I went in there,
junk.
why would you want to buy it?
I don't know. I wouldn't buy a pallet, but I could
Yeah,
tear
well,
apart.
yeah,
the
you
can.
can't. You buy it by faith
He's,
only.
he's had riding lawnmowers sitting on pallets and, I mean, big zero turns.
Yeah,
Yeah, no warranty, no, I don't think I'd be too smart buying it, but. So I don't
Fair
know,
enough.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, entertain a motion for adjournment.
so move.
All
Second,
those in favor?
I
I-
Uh,
see you next month.